Firstly, I'll just talk quickly about the process or the way I look at businesses. And we call this a fortified process. And it's broken down into these four things: identify, predict, and prevent. So it's more about, it's looking at business from a legal perspective, in my view, is about identifying or understanding what the value is in the business. What is the value? What is that value? And we need to understand that before we can protect it. So once we understand what the value is, we need to lock in and protect the value. We need to have ways that we can predict or forecast the likely risks that could drain value. And then we need to set up what I call prevention systems. They're systems to minimize or prevent the landmines along the way, or to minimize the impact of the landmines along the way. So that's just sort of the four ways that I look at it. And I look at it through this lens. So we've got risks and assets that can sit around the founder. The founder needs protection. Structure of the business needs protection or de-risking. Clients, and through clients, of course, or customers, whatever our clients are calling them, we're looking at the risk in terms of slow payment, non-payment, disputes, all of those things that can attack a business and minimize, reduce the value or create disputes. And of course, in the example of James, his was a mix of his greatest exposure. Well, in fact, he had a lot of these. He had customer exposure because he didn't have the systems and processes in place to ensure that customers paid on time, that he was aware if customers weren't paying on time, that there were appropriate mechanisms within the client agreements that dealt with fast enforcement if clients weren't paying on time, and that he had even gone back to the process of setting up the client relationship from legal documents to reduce the risk of disputes happening along the way. Because in fact, disputes are one of the main reasons that customers don't pay on time, and disputes often come from a lack of understanding or some sort of lack of communication of expectation between the client and the supplier. And a lot of that can be dealt with in the process of engagement of customers along the way. And we look at that from a legal perspective. How do they engage their clients from a legal perspective to make sure there is alignment on what is being provided, or what the client has to provide in order for them to provide those services or goods. Does that make sense? Team are another key area where a lack of legal systems and processes can create massive issues. The larger a team gets, the more likelihood there is of employment law risk, that an organisation doesn't have the right agreements in place, doesn't have the right systems or company policies in place, that they might be exposed to claims of underpayment or other non-compliance with the Fair Work or other legislative obligations that they have in relation to their staff. And not just that, there's the opportunity from a legal perspective to incentivise staff. There's lots of opportunity in the team section from a legal infrastructure to create incentives that are either monetary, that relate to equity in the business, that relate to phantom equity in the business. So the legal infrastructure around team can be both risk protection, but also value protection, because of course, we're in an age right now, or a stage right now, and all of our SME clients are in a stage right now where labour force is hard to find quite often in many industries, and so that retention, how do you retain staff, is such a key piece that that the legal infrastructure, the legal systems approach can really help to answer in team. So we've got suppliers, IP, regulatory, cash collection, contracts, future plans. I won't go through all of these in detail, But the concept from a legal perspective is that each of these areas are areas where risk can sit for a business owner, where value can sit in a business, and therefore there is an opportunity to build the legal infrastructure to protect against the value leakage, or protect against the risks, and lock in the value, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I want to add a couple of things and just
Yeah.
again helping the systemologists translate it down to their business. So uh, when marketing your systemology business, you want to think about what is the conversation that is going on in the minds of your prospects. What is it that is keeping the business owner up at night? Particularly in the current climate right now, people are quite risk averse. They don't want to lose what it is that they've got. So they'll be holding on. So having the messages around how systems helps to reduce some of that risk, and provide risk protection and the protection on existing value. And we use the metaphor and talk about the idea of business systems being like business insurance, as a way to, you invest up front and you create the systems and the processes to save you from the team member walking out the door and taking all of that great IP with them, or something going wrong, or there's a lot of these protection mechanisms. And what Joanna's just talked about now, like, she's already starting to uncover some of the systems that would be important to someone, a business owner who is in, a risk averse situation, or they're wanting to protect things. It's important to them to have dispute resolution processes identified up front, to have a system or a process to follow up payments, to have rock solid systems and processes for onboarding new staff and having supplier agreements and getting your policies in place. So a lot of what I love the way that Joanna is such a systems mind, and then she brings the legal aspect, and then it gives us a chance as systemologists to think this through another lens on how can we position this so business owners see the value for what's important to them right now. Because in the environment when the economy is all charging and everything's moving up, we think about systems and processes for growth and how do we acquire leads and sales process and all that. But as market conditions change, we know that business owners are thinking about that risk seeking. So we need to start to then change the message so that we can help them to see that systems and processes help to solve some of their problems that are currently on their mind, which then means they're more likely to spend and invest in it because they can see how it can save them. So that's just, some ideas there.
Thank you. That's awesome. I love that. And actually, in the book, I step out some examples of those systems, because some of them, that I see them all as coming back to the legal protection, but some of them actually aren't even legal answers. And they're things that you could be implementing with your client straight away. One example is, say, for example, with customers, slow paying clients. And I said before, quite often slow paying clients slow payment or payment slowdown can sometimes, and can quite often, link with there being some disconnect between a client's expectation of the goods or services that they were engaging your client to provide. And just a really simple system for what I call an early warning system, a really simple system to put in place that's not even legal. Like, I mean, it's not illegal. I mean, it doesn't need a lawyer to do, is what I mean. Is that could have been messy, is just a client survey process. So, if your clients don't have client survey processes in place, then they're not, just that simple method of a client survey, and well executed. We all know one of the issues with client surveys is how do you make sure they're completed and you get the data back. But having a well executed client survey process is an early warning signal for you. If you're getting problems come back in your client surveys, I promise you that will flow through later to slow payments. And so that's just an example of how in my mind, a lot of these systems that don't need a lawyer, that are practical, that can be implemented, do end up linking through to what ends up being a legal problem at the end if they're not resolved from the beginning. And I've got heaps and heaps of examples like that in the grow section, where you know some of them need legal assistance, but a lot of them don't. So I guess they're the sorts of things that you can also bear in mind. Oh, actually, and here I'm talking about that early warning systems, and the element that I talked about with James. So part of the issue with James's story is he'd if he'd been aware of the problem earlier, he could have stepped in and changed things. He could have got help. If he had got legal help earlier, we could have put pressure on the client to pay, and we would have got payment through. But the real problem was he didn't have the systems processes in place, but he didn't have the visibility to early warning of the problems that were emerging. And so I'm a huge advocate of us helping SMEs put in place these early warning systems. And so that can be reporting systems, making sure they understand the finance, those sort of systems. But they can also be this customer feedback, the client survey response, getting client survey results, disputes. As soon as disputes occur in a business, one of the things that I say with our clients is, okay, well, we need to resolve the dispute, but that's not the key thing for us. The key thing is always stepping back and understanding why the dispute happened, because there will be a core issue, and a core issue we need to resolve. And that will be far more important than this dispute at hand right now. And so in fact, I see disputes as opportunities for businesses to go back and create a system to resolve the issue that allowed the dispute to develop in the first place. And so that's something, quite often our clients can be hesitant to go to lawyers because they don't want to sue someone, because they understand getting involved in litigation costs a lot of money, right? And I actually completely agree with that. We try and avoid litigation at all costs, but I do think it is important for you to ensure that if your clients are identifying problems in the business, disputes in the business, they should always take that opportunity to go back and work out what the core issue is that has created that in the beginning. So maybe it's that viewpoint of a lawyer rather than you're going to see a lawyer to litigate. Does that make sense?